Matt, same question. Where do you feel the next big pop's going to be in Chicago?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think Jake hit on a lot of stuff as far as what we'll see in the shortest period of time. Uh, you know, a high level of appreciation. In my world, dealing with larger multifamily, it's harder to say. We do a lot of north side business. I spend most of my time in some of the neighborhoods that I had mentioned earlier. And, saying what's going to double in, a short period of time it's a difficult question to ask. But as far as just consistent, progressive, you know, property increases of value and appreciation, consistently year over year. The neighborhoods that I mentioned earlier, Uptown Edgewater, for example, even like Rogers Park and parts of Albany Park, Ravenswood, I mean, they're trading at cap rates that Lincoln Park and Lake used to trade when the cap rates in these further north neighborhoods were double, 300 points higher. So I think now with the amount of prospect for rent growth in those neighborhoods, when you factor that they're trading at 5.5 caps now, just like Lakeview and Lincoln Park, and you're looking at rents that are currently 15-20% lower than those adjacent neighborhoods. It's hard to say what would happen in a year's time or so, but over a reasonable period of time, the near midterm, I think those neighborhoods are going to continue to appreciate a lot because, in our world, a lot of our valuations, as opposed to single families or condos or small multi-residential, these deals are largely valued at, income and cap rate in a lot of ways, multiples of income, cap rate, and the per door, and that per door keeps rising quite a bit. So I think you're going to see a lot of steady increase there. It's not a big pop. I think Jake's right. I think those other, secondary markets in the city are more ripe for bigger, quicker appreciation. It's just not the world that I spend a lot of my time in. So I don't know as well.
We're talking a very optimistic tone here. And one thing I want to point out is, not be a buzzkill, but East Garfield Park right now is almost exactly in the state Bronzeville was in 2007 before the market crash. Bronzeville didn't turn into what Bronzeville has in the last few years based on just the last few years. It was something that started in the back end of the last cycle. So anyone listening out there, Garfield, you don't know what's going to happen, and I don't think everything will ever drop like it did in 2008. But those type of edge areas are the first ones to slow down or even drop really quickly because all the speculation backs out. The people that probably maybe push the loans or got hard money loans are thrown in and stuff like that. If anything actually of serious consequence to the economy happens. So keep in mind, I agree with everything you guys are saying, but some of these edge neighborhoods, it truly turns into a long game. You want to make sure you're playing that long game.
Mark, if I can add to that, because it's a good point. In the last several years, because of how attractive Chicago's been to out-of-state investors, a lot of these folks, a lot of these buyers are raising money, they're syndicating deals, at least in the larger stuff that we typically sell, and they don't know the city as intimately as maybe some of the people on this panel or some of the people listening to this podcast that are Chicagoans. And on paper, a lot of these secondary and tertiary markets and neighborhoods in the city, they look great compared to everything else that's trading at 5 and 6 caps. You get an 8, 9, 10 cap deal on paper, at least. It sounds great, and you're in Chicago on a macro level. But you're right. When the market turns, those tend to be the markets that do get hit first. And we've seen those markets for that exact reason. New Yorkers or people from California coming in, raising money. They're posted in the South Side or some of these, other markets where they're getting these big on paper returns. And then what happens is the property values shoot up, but then we've seen those same properties trading in much shorter periods of time because those operators don't know how to manage and maintain, that product, as well as, the north side that's longer term holders. So properties don't trade hands as frequently. So I do think that same driver that is shooting up those property values could be the same thing that is, potentially just a risk factor that you want to be aware of before you place a lot of money in those deals.
And I'll just, before we move on, one more thing. A well-capitalized property, meaning you're not 110% into the value like a lot of people were in 2008, and a well-run property with smart management, or at least you're putting the right tenants in there, and you're doing that. If you can make it through a 3 or 4 year type low, and it still be a good investment, you come out the other side with these big gains. So I think it's just something to point on there. And a lot of these out-of-state people that don't understand like what you're saying are the ones that end up being victims, and you don't have to fall with them. Is I guess the point I'm trying to make if you run a good game.